I'm really glad that this thing is taking its musical vibe from hip-hop, because otherwise that first episode would have been blasting Back in Black. Black Lightning. I actually had meant to cover the premiere episode back when it first aired, but I got wrapped up in a whole bunch of other stuff and I completely missed that it had happened. But I've now seen the first 2 episodes, and I kind of want to talk first impressions. Depending on the interest level, I may or may not do more reviews episode by episode as it goes on. There's only 13 in this first season. I'm still debating that. I'm probably still going to watch the show, though, that's your spoiler-free version of my thoughts, which is, yeah, this is pretty good. I'm actually quite enjoying it. I won't talk too much in the way of spoilers. Then again, its first 2 episodes, it's primarily set up. There isn't really that much to spoil, but, just consider that a warning. I'll try and not get into them. There might be a few, but it's not a spoiler kind of show. Not in the first 2 episodes anyways. So, Black Lightning, he's basically a retired superhero. He used to defend this town and take care of the citizens, and he was taking on like a major sort of local crime gang leader, the overlord of things. But he retired, and he retired primarily because of his wife and his family, his 2 daughters. But now it's some time later. He has made a career for himself as the principal of the local high school, where he actually keeps things pretty under control. He treats everybody in his school pretty well, which means that when there were people who were under him who graduated, and inevitably some of them got involved in the local gang called the 100, they had enough respect for him that they obeyed his desire to keep their involvement at the school itself down to a minimum, to basically not have them there at all. I mean, they're snatching these, participants elsewhere, but you get the sense that he is really a pillar of this community. And so he's been still trying to fight the good fight in a non-superhero kind of way, rather than what he had been doing as the vigilante Black Lightning in the past. But as you would expect, he gets called back into action, and I like the way that builds up. Well, most of the things about the setup I really like. Let me actually start with the lead, though. Cress Williams is an actor I am not particularly familiar with. I have seen some of the things he's been in, but I checked his IMDb page. I'm like, I've seen that. I don't remember him in it. That's not to say he wasn't memorable. It really looks like he was stuck in a lot of minor roles, at least in the things that I saw him in. He's really good here. He has a great presence. He has a wonderful... And he has to basically do 2 things. He has to be that uplifting, charismatic character when he is fulfilling his life as the principal, to make you believe that people, even gang leaders, respect him so much that they want to do right by him. And yet at the same time, he also has to be legitimately intimidating, not just, physically because he's a big guy, but also just in terms of being able to exude a sense of strength and power that would render people going, oh, okay, this is a problem, I gotta leave. And he's able to do both of those. And he does both of them not just well, but excellently. They haven't blatantly laid out exactly what his powers are and how they work. They're obviously lightning-based. He can hurl lightning around, and he can actually, if he's connected by a lightning bolt to somebody, can pick people up and move them that way. I don't think he himself is bulletproof. I think that's his armor, but he's got a power set that's easy enough to wrap your head around, even though I don't know all the ins and outs of it. One little touch that I really like, when he starts getting worked up, his eyes sort of flash this sort of white electric right around the iris. And you know what it reminds me of? The old Incredible Hulk show, when Bill Bixby's eyes would go green right before he transformed into the Hulk. It gives me that vibe, and that's a good thing to pull from when you have someone who, kind of manifests these otherworldly powers that they're otherwise trying to keep a lid on. Pretty much all the performances are good, if I'm honest. I do think Cress Williams is the big standout, but they're all good. The two young women who play his daughters are very good. The woman who plays his wife is good. They've got very good chemistry, which is really nice. I'm a little bit iffy on their sort of relationship dynamic as it's currently working. I might come back to that a little bit later. It's got James Remar in it as sort of his friend who techs him out and makes his gear. And I love James Remar. I've loved James Remar since I first noticed him playing Dexter's dad. So yeah, I'm always happy to see him. He has this very easygoing sense of authority to him. It's hard to nail down, but he brings that here, as he pretty much always does. I was impressed by the villains, actually, because the first 2 episodes in, we've met sort of the big head honcho that's going to be, at the very least, a season-long issue to be dealt with. But we've been dealing mostly with gang members that haven't stuck around too long. You know, they're basically only here for an episode or 2 before they get taken out of the story one way or the other. But they're still surprisingly working. There's an element to this that I can't describe as anything other than honesty. They feel a lot more real than most gang members I've seen depicted in television and in movies. Now, you know, understand, consider the source. I have no basis on which to judge what is or isn't real in terms of how gangs actually work. Zip. I've got no standing on that. But what I can tell you is that oftentimes when a violent gang, particularly a black gang, is depicted in a lot of TV shows and movies, they feel very overblown. They feel like caricatures. These characters don't feel like caricatures. Even the minor ones that we get, it feels like there is some depth there. They've gone in a very bad direction, but they don't feel like straw men. They feel like actual people, and you get little glimpses of, oh, okay, maybe there was at some point something nice, or maybe there even still is, but it's overridden by this other stuff that they're doing. And it's hard for me to nail down exactly why that comes across, but it does, and it's a sense I've gotten from the various gang members so far. Not so much from the head guy, because, I mean, his job is to just be, you know, the big intimidating guy, which he does pretty well. He's the only one so far who's kind of bordering on generic, but it's working so far, because again, they got an actor with a very good physical presence. That certainly helps. And he hasn't been called upon yet to do much more than just be there and occasionally do things to remind the audiences why he's a bad guy, and pretty much just hang around with a giant neon sign over his head that says, "I'm gonna be a boss fight." So, you know, he's working fine, but the ones under him, yeah, there's a weird layer of depth. I don't want to oversell it. They're not like deep, well-explored characters. They're there for short periods of time, but they just feel more fleshed out in a way. And I think in a lot of ways that kind of exemplifies this show as a whole, at least these first 2 episodes. There's pretty much nothing going on here that is particularly surprising or anything that I haven't seen done elsewhere. It's just being executed very well. All the pieces really work, because this is something where if any of these elements, or certainly if multiple of them, were just okay, as opposed to good, then the whole thing would just read generic, mediocre, because on paper it kind of is. It goes exactly where you think it's going. The by and large, the characters do what you expect these characters to do. But it's just got a polish to it. The pieces being used to tell this not exactly, you know, groundbreaking story are all really refined pieces. All of it's just really working very well. And sometimes you don't need a story to reinvent the wheel and bring you, you know, or do something that you've never thought of before. Sometimes it's nice just to get something that is familiar, but just really well delivered. And that's the vibe I get off Black Lightning so far. I'm having a lot of fun with it. It's really enjoyable. There's a good sense of weight and drama to the moments that are supposed to have that. It is fun and energetic and cathartic when it needs to be. The action scenes are not amazing, but for a TV budget are pretty darn good. As far as nitpicks go, I don't love his outfit. There's something about the sort of lit up lightning bolts across the chest that reads more cosplay than anything else. So I'm not in love with it. It's not terrible though, and what I do like is when he's out in that outfit, I love the way people react to him. I love that he goes to this hotel where he knows all, you know, the specific gang member that he's after, as well as this whole group of other gang members are going to be there. He goes up, the doorman sees him and goes, "Black Lightning, my man," just opens the door and tells him what floor the guy he's looking for is at. And a maintenance worker in the elevator holds the elevator, offers to give Black Lightning a lift up. I love that. And that's another thing that's really nice that this has, is that it has a sense of history, because this is Black Lightning coming back. We're not getting an origin story. We're getting a back in the saddle story, which we don't have quite as many of in terms of these kinds of shows and superhero stories that we're getting, you know, in medium aside from comic books. We mostly get origin stories, but this is not an origin story. This is a coming out of retirement story, and that's not massively different, but it's different enough to help it not feel as stale as it very easily could have. The other thing that I kind of alluded to initially, the relationship between Black Lightning and his ex-wife, there's nothing wrong with it, and like I said, they have good chemistry. Maybe I was misreading it, but there was a read I got on the relationship initially that the interpretation that I had of it, I liked better than what they actually did. Because the read I got on it initially was he very clearly wanted them to be together again. And she very clearly still cared about him, but the read I had on it was that she cared about him and always would, but also knew that they were never going to be together and it wasn't going to work, and she didn't want to actually go back to him again as much as, you know, she may have loved him even now. And so the read I had on it was that he really had sort of rose-colored glasses on, looking at basically a lack of rejection and taking it as things are gonna be better, she's gonna come back and be fixed. And that was my read on it. And again, maybe I misread it, because by the second episode it's pretty clear that she actually is ready to go that direction. And then we're gonna be getting probably a much more, I guess, expected and typical, she wishes he wouldn't go out as Black Lightning, but he still feels the need to do that kind of thing, which that's a dynamic that I've seen a bit more before. And the dynamic that I apparently invented in my head, I liked better because it didn't seem as well-worn a territory. So coming back to something else I like, I love that there are multiple layers to his getting back in the saddle and doing this and taking up the vigilante mantle again, because initially it is to protect his own family. His family, his daughters are in danger, he puts on the suit, goes and does it. But the show then does a really good job of hammering home the guilt he's gonna feel at the fact that he did that for his kids, but so many other people's kids that he knows, are in danger, and he's not doing anything for them. And it's managing to really convey the weight of that on him as a character. And that comes across really well and is a really good way to motivate him and keep him going, and to make us as audience members want him to do this. Because if it was a completely self-serving motivation and it was only about protecting his family, I'm not gonna say that couldn't work, but you know, then it really massively depends on you have to care about these specific characters a lot. Whereas if you expand it out and you make it so you want him to save this community, which it got me there within 2 episodes, then it really makes you pull for him to put on that suit again. So when he does, it just makes it all the more cathartic and triumphant. And I am really enjoying this. Again, I don't want to oversell it. It's not like at this whole new level, something we've never seen before. Like I said, it is pretty much as you would expect, but it's done with characters and a setting that I have not seen used as much before. I don't know how much people are comparing this to Luke Cage. I'm sure it's in there a little bit. I think there's a certain similar vibe. They use similar music cues, but the feel of the character certainly is very different from Luke Cage, at least as he was in the 1 season of his show that we've gotten so far. I would say a more apt comparison, point of comparison, would be the organized crime and the gangs that each are coming up against, because whereas in the 1st season of Luke Cage, they did a really great job building up an initial villain only to get rid of him halfway through the show and bring in a guy I'd never seen and only heard of by name and knew nothing about. And that just didn't work. Whereas Black Lightning, so far, we've been dealing with lower level guys, but we know the threat, we know who the big guy hovering over that is. And yet, the lower level guys don't just feel like fodder. They do feel like a genuine problem in and of themselves. So I think if nothing else, it's balancing its villains better than Luke Cage did. But it's also doing some different things. It really is going at this from the angle of Black Lightning, and also, you know, this guy, when he is the principal as well, being a pillar of the community. He's not just coming in to clean up the streets. He's coming in to lift up the people around him, and that's good stuff. Oh, and the one thing that is a bit spoilerish, so if you've been sticking through and you do want to avoid spoilers, I'd bow out right now. Okay, the thing with the older daughter starting to exhibit powers, I'm curious how that's going to go, because I find her intriguing as a character, especially knowing that she's motivated by a lot of the same sort of social causes that drove her father and still drive him, but he's now going about them in a different way, where she's much more gung-ho, you know, take up the picket sign and protest kind of person. So I will be interested to see how that plays out, and I think it could potentially be really intriguing. Could also be a point where it goes off the rails, but, you know, who knows? We'll see. So, Black Lightning, first 2 episodes. Have you seen them? What did you think about them? Whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Do all that stuff. You know the stuff. The likes and subscribes and listen to my podcast and follow me on Twitter and maybe check out the Patreon. Thinking about dropping something just in the tip jar? You know, the options there. Links for all that stuff is down below. And until next time, this council is adjourned.